Welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, the journey to becoming a conscious man, hosted by Milvo. Hey all, Milvo here, and welcome to episode 48 of the Unearthed Man podcast. To kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we work and gather, and their continuing connection to land and waters. I pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I pay tribute to the diversity of First Nations peoples of Australia and their ongoing culture. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, then welcome aboard. If you're one of my regular listeners, then welcome back. I really appreciate your ongoing support. So if you are looking to know more about the Unearthed Man, then you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you also feel called, it would be great if you can subscribe to the podcast via your preferred app and also leave a review. I know a lot of you enjoy the show, and therefore if you give back 5 minutes to leave a review, that would be gratefully welcomed. I was reflecting on the conversation with Jose last week, and one of the key themes that kept arising was him knowing there was more to life than what had been presented to him as a young boy and a young man. I'm also inspired by the rites of passage journey that he is on and is now guiding other men on. And once we move back into an open world, it is definitely something that I'll be exploring myself. In relation to today's guest, there is a similar theme to that of Jose. First up, I met him through the Panthera Cacao program led by Brendan Durrell, or BAM. He's also a co-founder of Modern Renaissance Man, a movement empowering men to fully express their truth and their own power. On top of that, he's a master coach and men's work facilitator, but mostly a catalyst for deep change. His story began after ending a successful corporate run to find his purpose. He's been a designer, trainer, sales manager, creative director, and entrepreneur. Needless to say, he's been around the block. After multiple business launches and phase, he co-founded Modern Renaissance Man, as previously mentioned. Apart from MRM, he also founded Freedom, a high-performing men's program that focuses on leadership, personal freedom, and brotherhood. His purpose is to inspire men to lead lives of freedom and joy. Welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, Wiacek. Hey, Voy, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing incredible. Super excited to be here, brother. Thank you so much for that powerful introduction. And just want to acknowledge you for the beautiful, beautiful introduction by giving reverence to our ancestors and the ancestors of the land. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's something that I didn't do in the first season, and then I realized that there was a gap in this piece. And it's certainly something I know as my journey I've gone, my conversation with ancestors, be all large. It's interesting when I've done a bit of reading or when you see different views on that, but the view is the ancestral group is actually a combined group of previous knowledge and previous people who can spiritually lead you is how I see it now. So, over nighttime, I openly ask ancestors and spirits to, come to me through the night and guide me as to where I should be going the next day and allow that to flow in. And it's been interesting, some of the dreams that come off the back of that. And you wake up next morning and go, wow, what was the message in that one? But yeah, I think it's pretty powerful. So no, I appreciate that you acknowledge them as well. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you spoke about that as well, because for me, this year was actually a big transitioning into bringing that legacy more forward to everything that I do. So one of my teachers, Jetty Azuma and Phil Gomez, who actually Jose might have brought up into the space when we did a rites of passage, they were men who constantly bring back this legacy and bring reverence back to the teachers, the ancestors, and whoever came before us. And just seeing the power and the energy that created in those conversations and how they brought into that space, it blew my mind. And it's something that I embodied and now have been doing the same. So to see you on that journey as well it hits right home. So really appreciate that.
Thanks, mate. It's beautiful. I actually had the opportunity to interview Jetty this season on the podcast as well. I dealt with Jetty a bit when I was doing my training with the Conscious Men Brotherhood. So Preston Smiles and Jetty. So I had connected with him on that. But yeah, again, he told this beautiful story about how he's connected in with the Native Americans and, and the whole lot of his journey now and surrendering into that. And I'm continuing into that now. It's, the book I'm currently reading again is the Surrender Experiment, and reflecting on how much of my life has actually when I actually just said yes to things, when I go back and I look back and I just said yes to things, how it's led to me where I've landed. And it's like, yeah, there's a whole lot to this point that there is a higher power that knows my purpose and knows where I should be going. And I just got to say yes more often.
Yeah, it's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah. And I feel like the more we say yes, the closer we get to alignment, because
Yeah.
it allows us to test out what's actually in front of us, what feels like it's our truth, what's not. And we got to just pick away the things that just don't align and get us closer to where we're supposed to be in the long run anyway. I feel
Yeah.
like it's like an unlearning or a unpacking as opposed to constantly getting more, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
I absolutely definitely agree with that viewpoint. That's that the listening to the chattering in the head. And again, I like what Michael Singer put in the book about the chattering is either it's everything you dislike or everything you like. It's plain and simple, like in his viewpoint. And so whenever your mind's going, no, we're not going to do that. It's like, oh, why am I really pushing back on this? Like, what is it that I'm actually holding back on? And is it just a part of my life I just need to let go? And it's hugely interesting. And just back on the continuing of that journey. This will come out afterwards, but I'm heading on a weekend away, which is 2 nights, 3 days with some men who are actually taking us back to country. And it's interesting. It's exactly 2 years after I had my enlightenment, my own awakening experience. And so they actually had to postpone it. So again, synchronicity, they postpone it. And so I'm now going away on a men's weekend with men's gathering exactly 2 years after I was awake. And we're actually going back to country and actually having Indigenous elders actually come along as part of that journey. Wow. So it's just super powerful, amazing again. Like, I didn't choose it, and that it's just happening. And the last episode, I'll talk into what actually took place. But anyway, enough about me and enough about what's going on. This is getting to know a lot about you, boys. So let's talk through your journey. So I know we talked a bit about you obviously successful in the corporate space and in sales and being creative and everything else. But what's the voice story? How did what took place back in your life? What was growing up look like for you? And, at what point did this, I suppose, light bulb come on for you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I definitely want to bring it back to where I grew up, because I feel like that plays a big role in my journey and how it got me to this place. And I was actually born and raised in Poland. So if you could think about like a super, super low key out in the woods, 5 homes only, the kids, well, it's just kids, me and my brother, that was the only kids, running around barefoot, just going crazy in the woods. That's kind of the lifestyle we lived. It was very remote, not much going on, and we stayed in that place. Mm-hmm. And as you could imagine, because it was just super remote, and the way that men moved about, specifically my father, there wasn't really much connection to emotional intelligence. There wasn't really expressing emotions. My father didn't really like pull me aside and say like, let's talk a little bit more about things. It was just get food on the table, have a roof over our head, and make sure that everybody's safe. It was all about safety, because we lived off the land. It wasn't opportunity to really sit down and have those conversations. It was just about work, safety, safety, safety. Mm-hmm. Because of that influenced obviously a big part of my life, and stoicism and having a straight face and not letting my emotions surface became essentially this molding that I carried forward. Now, long story short, we probably would have stayed there. But unfortunately, my sister was involved in a tragic accident and she was killed. And that started to split the family up, and it started to create a lot of pain that my mom and my dad just couldn't process, just because they didn't understand how to, right? This access to moving emotions just wasn't available. So one day, my dad actually went to America, stayed there for a month, made some money, and came back in the middle of the night. And we didn't even know. He woke us up and he said, gather your bags, we're going to America. So it was at a split second that I ended up in the US.
Wow.
And in that journey, as I mentioned, living out in the wilderness and just being pretty much on my own and not having specific role models, I didn't know much with regards to connection and expression. And going through that time, super anxious, couldn't connect, and super shy just to myself. And when emotions came up, of course, I would just stay away and try to suppress it because I wasn't sure. It was just not something I was recognized with.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, 19 years old. That was a big awakening for me. Reason being is at 19, I couldn't find myself. I was trying to find myself. So I got into this festival partying kind of scene. And in that space, I was doing, and I'll be honest, I was doing a lot of MDMA. Got into the partying scene, doing a lot of drugs. Mm-hmm. And as we know now, MDMA is a big drug that's been used for psychedelic therapy. However, back then, I had no clue what it was. I was just partying, trying to fit in and using it. And I've noticed while I was doing it, it started to shift my view a little bit on the world. And as it was doing that, things started to happen in my life, one after another, that really started to force me to look inside. Meaning, spent 3 years trying to buy my dream car. And at 19, obviously the ego and just trying to fit in the car was like that thing. You want to pull up, pick up your girl, and you're that guy. So I spent all this time getting a car. 1 month later, it gets stolen. Broke me. After the car got stolen, a week later, the girl I'm dating at the time breaks up with me. 2 for 2. And I was just like, shit, what's going on? And then a week later, Milvo, my best friend tries to commit suicide. And it was just this trifecta of things that really pushed me into a dark place. And funny enough, at that time, I lived in a basement. So I felt like I was at the bottom of my life. And all these emotions started pouring out, and I was feeling the pain that I've been holding on to and trying to suppress for so long, that I just sat there and I said, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to sit here and feel it all. And I did. And I sat there week after week after week, and I didn't come out. And I just sat there and felt it all until I started to get some energy to figure out what is actually happening. And when I asked myself that question, what is happening? That led me onto the journey of finding books, searching for mentors, and trying to understand deeper what's happening within me as opposed to what's happening out there. And that little pivotal moment, being in the basement, helped me climb up and up and up and up.
Wow. So let me just take you back a little bit. What age did your sister pass away?
Yeah. So funny enough, I wasn't born yet. She was 4 years old. And literally after her accident, I believe it was 6 months or a year, I was born after that.
Okay. So you were sort of then born into what was already becoming a fractious relationship but between your mum and dad.
Exactly. So I was born into that, and my mother carried a lot of anxiety. So she passed it to me through birth. And I was kind of the child in the family because my family was split up. I was always trying to compensate and make everybody happy because that's how I thought as a child I would bring value to the dynamic.
So at that point, so your parents are split up. What age? So you said your dad went to America for a month, came back. So there's you and your brother and your mum. So what does that, is that your dad just grabbing you or you and your brother, or did your mum come along? Like who was on that journey that came to America? And then like, where did you land and what did that look like for you? I'm guessing partially English speaking young child. What does that look like?
Yeah. So it was age 8 and mom, dad, brother, we all came and we landed in New Jersey. And as you could imagine, not having a TV, not being connected to the internet, living in the woods, and then coming to a place like New Jersey where there's airplanes flying over, cars everywhere. I was like, where the fuck am I? Super massive culture shock, super big identity crisis. And it was just a place of me trying to figure out how I fit into this new world. Because now as I lived in America, most of the community that I grew in, they didn't really accept me because I was Polish. So I was like, well, I'm not really American, I'm Polish. But then when I went back to Poland, because I lived in America now, all my friends there were like, well, you're not really Polish anymore, you're American. So now I'm in this weird limbo phase trying to figure out who am I? And I'm going on this journey of self-discovery that later led to my big awakening at 19.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Fresh off the conversation with Jose, just the fact that you guys set up Modern Renaissance Man that we'll get to as we go along. Very similar stories. Puerto Rican lands in the US, not Puerto Rican, not American, not American, not Puerto Rican, not Polish and everything else. So I from a synchronicity point of view, it's really interesting that you guys end up finding each other, given some somewhat similarities in the story. But yeah, so in relation to that, so you're 8 and you land here. You're with your mum and dad who, like, they're in this fractious relationship, but they're still in a relationship. So I mean, again, like the role that you're playing throughout that from 8 up until, what time you said you're in the basement at 19. So there's some point where you chose to leave home and head off into that. What does that look like for you constantly? And what's your relationship with your brother as well? Because, how does that, I suppose there's a piece I know you said, long story short, but let's sort of pack, let's stretch out this story a little bit. So what is that looking like for you? Obviously being challenged at school, not really feeling like you're fitting in, brothers probably feeling something similar, parents who, not wanting to talk on an emotional aspect. How's that playing out for you?
Yeah, great question, Melvo. So it was very challenging, I have to say. And I didn't understand how challenging it was, of course, because I was in it. And that's all I knew. That was just the world I thought was the world. With regards to the relationship with my brother, because of the accident, it's as if it impacted him the most. And there was a piece of him that kind of shut off. And the connection with me was kind of just distant.
Right.
So the older we grew, the further the relationship kind of just split apart. He went and found his own group of friends. I went and found my own, and we just kept separate. We never communicated really. We never chatted. And anytime I would actually want to have that connection because it's something I yearned for. He was my older brother. He was the cool one. He would just push me away. Because one, he didn't know how to interact with me, and he didn't know how to hold that connection because he lost something that was so dear to him at that age that it almost felt like he didn't want to feel that again. So he just didn't want to deal with me. At least that's what I thought at the moment. So for me, once again, connection with my parents was, of course, there. They loved me and I loved them, but there wasn't this deep relationship. So I went out on my own and I just kind of became a little outcast, and I would just find a group of friends. And from all day to all night, I was always outside the house, either skateboarding, playing soccer, creating art, getting into trouble, just doing, teenager shit just to find my place in that world. That's how it kind of started to move about.
So so was a point where you actually left, like you just decided that's it, I'm out of home, because as I said, you landed in a basement, but is that your parents' basement where, all the grief started to come up, or is this a different location?
Yeah. So it's actually my parents' basement. So I was living in my parents' basement. And that's when everything started to come up. And another piece that I want to share, Milvo, too, that's important to this, because I feel like it played a big role in the chemistry in my body and why I felt so far into depression, is at age 17, as I was trying to find groups and different places to really feel like I belong, one of my friends at that time invited me to the gym. And it was the first time when I went to the gym that I felt like I had control. I had control over how I look and how I feel. So I got super involved with the gym, so much so that it was all day and all night kind of life. It became my lifestyle. And through the gym, I became a little bit more comfortable. My body began to change. So I felt like people were starting to see me, because that's all I wanted as a child. I just wanted to be seen, but I didn't know how to express it. So why don't I just build my body so I can be bigger? And now people would notice me. And as I got into that space, I learned how to network. I learned how to connect a little bit more. I got more disciplined. I learned how to cook. All these different things show me how to be more disciplined and more optimal, if you want to say it that. But the big piece to this was I met actually a wrong group of people.
Yeah.
And because I was in that lifestyle and I wanted to get into competition, these guys were like, hey, you're looking pretty good. Seems like you got it down. You seem like you want to compete. Why don't you join us, hang out with us, and we'll help you take it to the next level? What happened then? I got introduced to steroids.
Right.
And for the first time, I believe I was 18, I tried steroids. Scared shitless, in the basement, out here with a needle, no clue what the fuck I'm doing, trying to get this thing into my butt, into my ass, and I'm freaking out. So I tried it for a month. I felt like I wasn't getting the results. So I was like, this is stupid. So I just dropped it. And that was the problem. If you know about testosterone, when you take obviously performance enhancement drugs, testosterone shoots up. And if you don't come off it properly, it shoots right back down even further. Estrogen goes up and it throws off the chemical imbalance in the body. So not only did I lose my car, I lost my girlfriend, my friend tried to commit suicide, and I just jumped off the juice improperly. I'm all over the fucking place. So now I'm so deep in this hole in the basement at my parents', and I'm just trying to figure my shit out.
Yeah. So it sounds like, if I pick up on where you're at is, and this is from what I picked up on many conversations with the men that I have here is, when that part of us is missing that we're yearning for. And I know this, I can speak from my experience with my life because, my parents were, again, unemotional in bringing us up. Even to the point, I know my mum doesn't listen to this, like I'll send her a loving message and I get back on a Facebook messenger with a thumbs up. It's like, that could not be any more impersonal than you could ever get. Is someone lazily going thumbs up, like, please send me a love heart, right? Anyway, my mum is beautiful and I love her. And that's everything she brings to the table. We just have to find something external. Like if we're just not getting it internal, as you said, we tend to shut off and go, okay, to protect myself, now I'm going to look externally to me and I'm going to look for what does that validation look like? So for me, it was sport competition. Like I played any and every sport I could get my hands on. And I was, I could do sport. I was always reasonably talented at sport. So I could grab a table tennis bat and I could probably quickly learn table tennis. I could go and grab, go and play Australian rules football. I could go and play baseball, and basically, be reasonably good at all those sorts of things. So that's where I spent all my energy then, was like, okay, maybe if I get the trophy and maybe if I get this, for me, it sounds like, you ended up in a similar path as like, maybe if I build my body up, as you said, people are going to see this. Maybe if I I become the party person. Like maybe I get my validation through the fact of, how many of the drugs can I hit and how long can I party on for? Can I do the 36-hour run before I go to the, the wind down party and, these sorts of things? Is that how you saw it playing out for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, now that's how I see it played out, because at the moment I didn't understand. But yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And, looking back at it now, the only reason I was doing bodybuilding and getting into fitness is because I felt like I belonged and I was getting noticed. So as the shirt got a little bit tighter and the bicep was a little bit bigger, girls started to notice, friends were asking me in school. And that was kind of the way I started engaging in conversation. And it felt more comfortable to speak about those things because I felt like I had experience in it.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing is as soon as I got injured and I couldn't work out, my body started to go back to its natural shape. And once again, I fell into depression. So it was like this weird combination. It's like the more I work out, the more my ego got boosted and I felt like I fit in. And as soon as I couldn't go to the gym, I was back to square one. So it was almost as a distraction at some point too, that I was using to once again suppress all the emotions I was feeling, because this was just something I was holding on to so tightly. And it was the only thing I felt I had an identity with.
Yeah. So, and it leads to, I think, we might talk to this a little bit later on as well, but it's about, who am I if all this was stripped away? So who am I if I don't have this muscly body? Who am I if I don't have this beautiful car? Who am I if I don't have this, this gorgeous partner or whatever it happens to be? And I think, that's part of a journey that we end up trying to get to or understand a bit more, which I think, is further down the track for you. So 19 in the basement, like, let's run through that. Like you're talking like you're literally there for months, but you've got parents who potentially would not understand what you're going through, I'm guessing, given that where they're at. So how does that look like for you? Because, you're in the basement, you're trying to work through this, you're allowing all these emotions to come up, but, a lot of people require support networks or help them to understand what that looks like. So does that journey look like as, a young 19-year-old man just trying to navigate through that himself?
Yeah, let me tell you, a shitload of pizza and a shitload of crying. So, but in all seriousness, as I mentioned, one of my friends he went through a big breakup and he wanted to commit suicide. And I remember him calling me and saying, hey, listen, like I just opened my sister's drawer and I saw this medication and I took as much as I can and I don't think I'm going to make it. And I told him to spit it out and finally got him to like puke it all out. And I went to his house. I picked him up, brought him into the basement with me. And he actually stayed there for a few weeks with me in that place. So we kind of had each other in that moment.
Okay.
And it was almost, I don't want to say like a pity party, but we just kind of were like, well, at least we're not alone. We're both feeling like shit. So why don't we just go out and have pizza every day? So we literally, that was our kind of happy moment. We would eat pizza every day and just be in with our feelings this whole time. And it was crazy because it was springtime. Still remember this. I was just stepping into college, was working on almost a 4.0 GPA, was crushing it, was doing really, really well. And everything started to shift. And as I got out of the basement, the sun was shining and it felt like it was raining every day. It felt like there was a cloud over my head. And I was just like, how can I actually get out of this? I'm done and I'm tired of fucking feeling like this. So my friend and himself, we just kept talking about it, expressing. And I didn't know that we were actually doing, looking back at it now, I'm having a little breakthrough. We were kind of doing men's work already at that age because we're allowing to see each other and speak about our feelings and emotions in that time, which created a release. And as we got a little bit of a release, I used that little space that I had just to learn a little bit more about myself. And that was through books.
Yeah.
So got on Amazon, got into books, and books became kind of my other best friend that helped me come out of the basement step by step and learn more about myself and what's actually happening within.
So is there, so on that point, again, it's sort of interesting, the books I'm now reading, I don't think I would have ever come across on Amazon if I had, because wouldn't have known to go there, right? But now I know what I'm looking for, right? I can find all these great books. So like what was there one or two books, or is there a specific book, like can you recall anything that actually helped, like in reading through that you go, oh my God, I'm not alone, oh my God, like this is actually, there's stuff I can do here? Was there anything specific? Because I know others people can point to certain books that they've read that are the aha moment books or so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple books and I can't remember all of them to be honest, but the ones that come to mind right now is The Alchemist was a big player. I really love storytelling, and that book really just shined a lot of different perspectives for me, as well as The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And then the last book was How to Win Friends and Influence People. For some reason, that book came into my life, and it really gave me the confidence to go out and connect a little bit more. And I started using some of these strategies to connect with people, and that helped me get out a little bit more out of my shell, helped me leave behind the bodybuilding lifestyle, and allow me to connect and start building relationships. So The Alchemist, Four Agreements, and How to Win Friends and Influence People were pivotal in my life at that time.
Yeah, excellent. All awesome books. We've got The Alchemist in the home, but I don't think I've read it. And funny enough, my son actually bought The Alchemist and actually read it and has handed it back to us. And he's like, he got through it in short time, and he's 21. And he's like, this is an awesome book. And so it's interesting because there's a whole lot of other books that we have in the house. I've certainly read The Four Agreements, and I probably think I've now read 3 or 4 other books in that series, from Don Miguel Ruiz. Is it Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I would recommend, anyone in their teens, if they want to work out, what to do and how to get there, some of those books are quite timeless. It's like anything in books, like read it, take the parts you like. There'll be parts you may not fully agree with or align with, and that's okay because, we're a whole lot of different viewpoints. So 19, college, you and your mate, working through this. And I love the fact that, did you find that in the conversations you were having, as you said, you started with a pity party, but on reflection, it might have been the first view of men's work. How did the conversations just enable themselves to be safe and non-judgmental? Because that's one of the key fundamentals in people being able to release, is that, because one of the topics you touched on earlier was your family was about safety, right? But there's a different safety in relation to just human experience of, not being taken out by a Bengal tiger or not being taken out by, some sort of animal, type of thing, versus feeling emotionally safe to actually have those conversations. So how did you create that within that space with your friend? I mean, or did that just naturally take place because you were both in a very similar situation?
Yeah, Beautiful question, Melville. So at the moment, I wasn't sure, obviously, how we were creating safety. It was just happening. But looking back at it now, some of the key things that stand out and which actually are ground rules or standards that we have in men's work was confidentiality. Because we were the bestest of friends, I felt like I had that trust with him, and he was the only one I would kind of come by and talk about the things that I wouldn't share with anybody, even my parents. So in that moment, we had that bond, we had that trust that whatever I share in this space stays in this space, and whatever you share stays here as well with me. So we were already building confidentiality as a standard, which then allowed us to go a little bit further. And he was the type, once again, that I knew everything about. We always joked, we laughed, we cracked at each other. So there wasn't judgment. There was no judgment in that space. So we were able to say the craziest things. And yeah, we might laugh at each other for it, but there wasn't any feeling of judgment from it. So that created more safety. So I would say those two key points, confidentiality and non-judgment, was pretty much the pivotal point of allowing and creating a safe space for us to be heard, be seen, be felt, and ultimately be loved.
Yeah. And therefore, in a very simple term, what took place in the basement stayed in the basement, and that's as opposed to what happened on the end of the season trip. Like, it's a completely different dynamic. But I like that. Like, exactly right. I mean, to a degree, we got to create those basements. We've got to create those spaces, for men to feel that they've got to feel that they are in that beautiful, safe container. And I find that anytime you do that for men, people go, "Is this safe?" Yep, and they go, "Bruh." Like they just let out, and then it's the actions that follow it, right? It is exactly that. So it doesn't get spoken outside of that, and that's where people then learn. I know that's what I learned. It took me 50 odd years to learn to trust men, and to be in that support for men, because and that took place in one weekend, but you can rebuild that trust in a very short period of time, and there's a bond that you get created, knowing that whatever was spoken in that room or in that safe space, it has not gone back to someone's partner, has not gone back out to the social media rumor mill and all these sorts of things. And it's a hugely powerful. And I think the more we as men can do that, hold that space for other men, and they feel that safety and that confidentiality, then they can actually then do the same. And we end up in a much better world, as opposed to the propaganda and the gossip and the innuendo that is rife that happens around us.
And when was it for you? I'm curious. What was your first experience of feeling some of those standards like confidentiality and non-judgment and having that kind of safety from another man? Because you mentioned it took quite some time to get there. So when was your first experience, Melville, that you felt safe to express your truth and be held in that?
So I did Unleash the Beast, which was a Conscious Man Brotherhood session run by Preston Smiles. They came out. It was in 2019, and what actually happened was that we were doing different exercises, and one of the things that there's confidence in that room, but you had to open up about some deep shame that you were holding. But an exercise took place where we came back and we're jumping up and down and dancing, and I basically tweaked my calf. I didn't tell anyone.
You're dancing hard. You were going hard.
Oh, yeah. But also old man calves, right? They're trying to keep up with the 20-odd-year-olds in the room. We went and did this other external exercise, and I text my wife just saying, "Hey, look, I think I've hurt my calf. Can you just get some ice?" But my message was for when I get back to the room later on. She read it as emergency. I've got to come and bring ice. So she knocks on the door at this men's workshop, delivers ice while we're all out and about. I didn't know she'd done this, right? We get back from the exercise. We debrief of what's taken place, 50 men in the room. And one of the coaches goes, "Now, I believe a man here actually may have hurt his calf in one of our exercises. Is that correct?" And I'm like, "Fuck. Yep." Put up my hand, right? Yeah. And basically they said yes, because, so best, and he said, "So there's 50 men in this room and you chose to go and talk to your wife about this. So you ran off to your wife. So 50 men in the room and you didn't tell any of these 50 men, and you ran back to your wife to tell her that you've done that." And that was a pivotal moment for me, because I was standing in the middle of the circle. I had two choices. I could be angry with my wife, or I could take full accountability for the fact that I didn't trust the men. And I took full accountability. I said, yes, that's correct. I went external. I didn't come to any of you men. And they go like, we've got fucking ice left, right in the fridge here. So they, to a degree, called me out on it, but didn't attack me for it. And that was the key thing. Like I got called out for that piece. What then took place was the 4 coaches came over and they asked me to lean back into their arms, of which I did. Next thing I know, I'm actually held up in the middle of this circle by 50 men, all got a arm underneath me. And I'm just standing in tears. Like I am just bawling my eyes out. And then I'd stop and then I'd go again and then I'd stop. So 3 times I was just in immense tears. Then they let me down, and then here's all these men that were just standing there. And I was looking around eye to eye to all these men, and there was not one judgment. And in fact, what came out was they thanked me for being so honest in going there and allowing all my emotions to come out, that actually gave permission to every other man to even go deeper. And so at the very end, we had to do this run a gauntlet exercise. And the one thing that I committed to then was, I now know that I can get love and support from men, and that I can actually trust men in my life, because I never had that before. Growing up with 2 brothers and a dad, always in competition, I never felt the trust. So that was the pivot. That was 2 years ago. And I still, the emotion still comes up from that, because it was just such a huge moment but it had to be, for me, it was physically held. Like physically, like these guys literally held me up. Like any of them could have dropped me, but the fact that they all did this both emotionally and physically just said, yep, that's exactly what it looks like. And from that, I knew then what my purpose was. How do I create safe spaces for men? How do I create that confidentially? How do I get men to relearn you can trust men, and we can hold you, and we can have your back? So thank you for asking.
Wow.
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, man, that's incredible. And what a way to have a first experience. Because some guys typically, like for me, it's like speaking to another man or going into like a small men's group, and you had the whole fucking experience. I mean, you had the whole call out, you were in the middle, guys picked you up, you teared, everybody else followed. Like, what an incredible way. And I'm so glad you brought that up into the space, because that's leadership. That's in itself leadership. When you could really step up and speak from your truth and allow the ego just to shut off and say, hey, listen, guys, like I did fuck up and I did call my wife, and I'm taking ownership of that. You led every single other man to say, you know what, this guy's speaking his fucking truth. I'm willing to go there as well. And it's a term we like to say. It's like when one of us pops, we all pop.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the other term I've heard used is that, the rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes, exactly. So that's the one.
Yeah. So I think, for me, that's been profound. And for me, it's like, okay, I now have to, and so this is the other part that falls for me with this, is for me then there's like, I now feel that I have to give that back.
Right.
That gift was given to me, but it's not mine to own. I was given that gift of trust, of support, and love by men. And my job now, or my role now, is to share that gift with as many other men as I possibly can, so that they can actually also share in the beauty that gift can actually provide. At the moment it's through the podcast, or it's through messaging, or it's through little programs I do here and there. But again, that's how I now feel called about, well, how do we share this gift? Because the more we can share this gift of love and support, and allow men to feel trusted again, and allow men to step back into true leadership, not child leadership, but true king style men, masculine leadership, then our world become a safer place. Our women will feel safer. Other men will feel safer, and we can actually get that ripple effect happening across the rest of the world.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you. That was a bit of a sideway. Look, I appreciate that. It's
perfect, man.
It's not often I get interviewed on my podcast. So let's continue to talk through that, right? So now at 19, you're going through, you're reading books, and you're now learning more about you and what's happening for you. So what happens next? Like, what's the next steps? Where do you go from here? And constantly now working through your own. I suppose as things that things continue to come up. There's your journey that happens from that. So what does 19 onwards start to look like for you now, boy?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I got my first dose of books and I started to learn a little bit more, get more perspectives about what's really out there and how I can actually start to change myself. And I actually was doing the most important part, taking action on it, because everything was just stripped from me. It felt like my girl left, my car, everything. I couldn't even technically go anywhere because all I had was my feet. Everything was stripped. So I was like, now I really have to take action on what I'm learning. So as I started taking action, I started to get this kind of boost. And I was like, holy shit, I've been this shy kid. Now I'm learning how to connect with friends. Now I have these agreements I could abide by. Now I'm reading other books on how to optimize myself. And now I'm stepping back into the gym. Not this time from trying to build my body so everybody sees me, but this time to really optimize my life. And I actually decided to change gyms. I never talked to those people again that positioned me to take obviously performance enhancement drugs. And I started just to take care of myself. And I told myself, I'm going to give myself this next year to really just focus on me. And as a lot of men know, like when we do have a breakup, we can either have a breakup or we can have a breakthrough. And I decided to take the latter. I decided to have a breakthrough. And through that breakthrough, self-care, constant self-care and love started to come through. And I got really big into entrepreneurship. I got big into total human optimization. And I got big on how I can really just optimize my life and create freedom for myself and forever for the people that are around me in this world. And then
No, you keep going.
And then I was going to say the biggest shift happened in college. So even though I was, of course, doing all these books, reading everything and starting to kind of like crack my shell a little bit, I was still super shy. And as I was in college and university, I had no clue what I wanted to fucking do. I mean, I literally went to school for about 3 years and I'm like, I still don't know what I want to do. And this lady one day walks into class and she's like, all right, guys, I'm going to do a little presentation. Pulls up the screen, does a presentation, and she speaks about sales. And she goes, well, you're going to earn more money than a doctor. You earn more money than a lawyer, and you're going to have more free time. And you don't have to go to school for 8 years. And here's this kid in the back of the class, super shy, doesn't even want to raise his hand. She goes, I'm going to make more money. I don't have to go to school anymore for longer, and I'll have more freedom. Fuck it. Put my name on the list.
Yep.
Next week, I get the call. They invite me to this program and they show me all the different things that are possible through sales. And mind you, this was the biggest, edgiest thing I could have done because I'm this kid that can't even speak right now to people. And I'm out here signing up for sales. But I was like, you know what? I'm here now. I literally have no direction. I'm just going to lean in. I went for it. What a fucking journey. Literally every single day after that I went to school, as I was in the sales program, my body would just be triggered and in so much fear and panic that I would actually stay in the car and have panic attacks because I was afraid to go to class because I knew I had to, speak in class. I had to perform sales. I had to do interviews, all these things that would push me to get out of my shell. And I was freaking the fuck out, Milvo. I'm talking about like, I was skipping class nonstop. The school was literally calling me and telling me like, listen, if you skip any more days, you're gone.
Right.
And I was just like, fuck, I need to figure this shit out. And in that moment, I remember sitting in the car right in front of university and like crying. And I'm like, how the fuck is there guys like Tony Robbins that can go out there and be on stage and do all these things? And how is it that these entrepreneurs can go out and speak to people and speak to women and do all these things? And I fucking can't. Like, what's wrong with me? Right? The shame, the guilt, the victim story, being a victim, not taking ownership. What's wrong with me? So I decided to go to the doctor. And I go to the doctor and they give me this anxiety test. And I take the test and he's like, yeah, you're through the fucking roof. So we're going to give you some medication. And I was like, all right, well, maybe this helped. I get the medication. And in that moment, it was a trauma response. For some reason, they reminded me again of the steroids. And I looked at it and I was just like, fuck, I don't know if I should take this. Let me do some research. Do some research on it, read some reviews, speak to a couple of people, and they're speaking about this medication. And yeah, it works, but they kind of feel like a zombie.
Yep.
It hits so hard that it takes away and numbs a lot of the things in the world that they feel. And they just kind of move through the world. And I was just like, man, this ain't for me. So I got to figure this shit out. So I dropped it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And no matter how much I fucking sweat, no matter how red I get, no matter how fucking scared I am, I'm just going to go and just give it one last shot. And if I can't do it, this shit ain't for me.
Yep.
So I wake up the next day, I put on my suit because they made us wear suits at university because, you know, you're the sales guy. So you want to be, you got to have the look, right? So I put on my suit, hand is literally shaking. I tie it up tight, get to class. And it's the first day of class again. And the professor goes, great. Welcome to class, guys. I'm going to tell you what. This is actually the first class you're going to have, and you don't have to come to class till the end of the year. And I was like, holy shit, what the fuck did I sign up for? This is perfect. I don't have to show up. I'm over here celebrating. I'm like, yeah, let's fucking go. Professor goes out after that statement, and he goes, well, with that, you guys are going to have to do 20 presentations. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to go to the classes in the university, knock on the door, and try to sell this program or present this program to all the students. And it's exactly how that lady got me. And I realized in that moment, I was like, holy shit, for me to pass this class now, I got to do 20 fucking presentations. What the fuck did I get myself into? Like, if that wasn't edgy enough, it's like, I'm over here sweating. So literally through that, you know, I was like, I got to do it. My parents worked way too hard. I have to graduate. So I would just push myself to just go for it. And I still remember walking into this first class. And I walk into the class and I peek over and I look, and then there's like 20 students. And I'm like, fuck that. That's too many. I can't do that. So I walk over to the next class. I peek over. There's like 25 students. I was like, holy shit, is there a class with like 2 students? Like, I can't do this. Go to the next one. There's like 10. I was like, all right, fuck it. I think I could do it. I do this like super light knock on the door where like you knock, but like you could barely hear this shit. Yeah. And I'm here just kind of doing like a soft knock. Teacher doesn't look. And I'm like, fuck. I knock a little more. She doesn't look. And the student goes, hey, there's somebody at the door. And she looks. And then that's when I knew. I was like, oh, fuck. Now I really have to talk to her. And I tell her about this project that I'm doing. I'm literally shaking. And she says, all right, you got 10 minutes. Go for it. Whip out the presentation. And I stand in front of the class. And I'm out here like bright red, Melville. I'm sweating. My body is in such a trauma response because right now I'm being seen.
Yep.
And I'm being seen for who I am. And I'm fucking panicking. But I let a word out. You know, I let a couple words out. It wasn't perfect. I butchered that shit, but I got it done. She checked it off, and I was like 19 more to go. And as I went on this journey, going to class and hitting finally that 19 and then finally that 20, it changed me. It changed me. It showed me that I can actually be that person who gets to speak in front of people. I can actually be that person that can be like a Tony Robbins or somebody else that can speak in front of people and be okay with it.
Yeah.
Was I perfect? No. But it showed me that there's freedom in that. What was the lesson for me? To lean into the discomfort. Because the more I leaned into the discomfort, the more freedom I found within myself. And that was the pivotal moment for me. And then everything after that just changed completely.
Yeah, beautiful. There's a couple of things that sort of come up with me on that one. And the interesting is that Tony Robbins is just a human being like the rest of us. So if he can do it, we can do it. Yeah, I used to always, you'd have these people turn up and go, you can be anything you want to be in your life. And I'm like, fuck off. I don't have the intelligence to do this or that, right? And now I sit back there and go, they're right. But I just didn't understand what they were pretty much saying. And they never went to the point of going, you're just limiting yourself, you know.
Right.
And for me, and I don't know whether you felt this or whether you've sort of thought through this. Often, you know, we have this innate fight, flight, you know, piece that we're sort of growing up with, and often that can be, you know, that discomfort. You know, do I want to, you know, if I'm in flight mode, am I actually going to allow to do me, or am I actually going to recognize that I'm in flight mode, but actually still stand in it and actually say, hey, I'm actually going to do this? Because part of what you're saying is retraining our nervous system about, you know, so if every time we stand in that discomfort, we become slightly more comfortable, that's because this nervous system that's been built, which takes us back to, your, 0 to 8, you live in this world of safety. You've been told that, how just to survive. Like if something bad's going to happen, we have to run away from it. But, the safety is a good thing. If it's not safe, then we have to run away from it. So we build up a nervous system about, flight or fight. And, and so, yeah, I can sort of feel where you're at from the presentation point of view. I operate, as a senior role in the corporate area. You stick a microphone in my hand and it's like I've got, shaking like a leaf, like like it's like I'm almost like doing rapping, like with the fact these microphones coming in and out and people hearing every third word because it's there, it's not.
Everybody's in the crowd like this.
Exactly, that's right. And everyone's going like, he's a super confident guy, and you stick a microphone in his hand. It's like they've given me electric shock, and I'm like, bounce all over the place. So again, it's that. I don't know why it is. I can stand up without a microphone and yell at people in a really projected voice, and I'm actually okay. So it's a really weird thing. But yeah, so that's a really, I love that what you've worked through on that journey, because there's obviously still parts of you when you're going through that, as you said, that's aligning to almost the victim piece, or, there's something happening to me here, and not a control mechanism. Like there's something else still controlling me because of how my body's reacting. And is that what you were actually feeling?
So I felt that, I just didn't know of it. So I didn't have the awareness. And one thing I love to always say is that like awareness is the hack. And we can't, I believe Preston always says this too, is like, we can't intervene in the world we can't see. So even though I felt it, I didn't understand and see the world that was actually causing this to trigger me. I felt it in the body, but I wasn't sure where it was coming from. And going obviously in front of people was more like a forced growth. And yes, to your point, exactly, it was recalibrating my nervous system, and it was building a threshold so I can hold more. But I wasn't sure how to actually do it intentionally, right? Of course, intentionally, in a quote unquote, I was pushed into a class and I was doing it, but I didn't know how to do it on my own until I actually stepped deeper into men's work and started to understand the body, emotions, nervous system, the whole nine. So that for me was kind of like the first moment of like, I can actually create deep transformation. I just need to lean into the things that truly, really scare me. And I know it ain't easy. I know it's difficult, but right now, this is the only path that I know forward. So I have to do it. And also I spent 20 grand on university, 20K in loans. Like I got to get it fucking done. So there's no going back. So, I kind of had those things in my favor.
So did you have, was there support for you through that process? Like, was there the ability that after you came out of a presentation, where, after going and finding a hand dryer to dry yourself off completely, because I know what it's like to stand there sweating and then you walk out and you feel just soaked. Was there someone you could go back and talk to that experience, or that was just something you then just had to do and you continue to do on your own and just be in discovery mode?
I was ashamed. So I was ashamed to talk about it. Because I would sweat so much and I was so uncomfortable. Yes, of course I had friends, but I was just afraid to talk about it because I felt like I was going to get judged. And I had that one friend, of course, and we would laugh about it. And he would tell me that he would sweat all the time. So we still had that connection, but he didn't understand because he didn't go to university. He wasn't really in like business, corporate environment. So like he kind of knew, but he didn't. And I didn't really feel like we resonated on that. So I kept it to myself. So honestly, the only thing I did was I actually brought 2 and 3 shirts to school. When I presented and it got so sweaty, I went to the bathroom. I changed my shirt. I started to breathe in the mirror, tell myself it's okay, you got this, wash some water over my face and go out and do it again. So I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't have any place to unpack. I didn't really journal at the moment, so I didn't know how to express it onto paper. I just kept saying like, this is the only way to do it, bro. Change your shirt, go back out there again and try again. And that was my way of coping and trying to grow through it.
So I'm glad you touched on the word shame, because I think shame and guilt are the two, for me, the two key detractors of the ability for people to then move forward and grow. And it drives the whole, this is only happening to me. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I feel bad about this. I must be the only person in this world, which again gives us gets us back into, as we spoke about earlier, when did we learn to trust others that we could actually talk to them? And so if we don't have that trust, or we don't know where to go to, then it's easy for us to constantly, allow the voice in the head to go, start having all that negative talk and start to talk into, which just, continues to drive into that shame and that guilt, which, is super challenging, I think, for a lot of people, that, could be, funny enough, could end up in a whole different life to what they've got, purely by having an ability to express that one thing or that piece of shame that is potentially holding them back.
Yeah, 100%. And I think shame and guilt, to your point, are two of those things that most men have the most trouble with. Anger is a big one as well that we need to work through, but I feel shame and guilt is at the forefront of a lot of these things.
Yeah, I feel anger is the emotion, is the only way that they can express the emotion, because they're not touching on the shame and guilt. I know for me, once I've actually removed the shame and guilt, the anger actually basically disappears, because I'm not reverting to this other emotion that I don't know how to actually do, because I'm removing the underlying root cause. So you finish your 20 presentations, so turn up class 1, go and do your 20 presentations, obviously pass the course, which is excellent. I'm guessing early 20s at this point in time.
Exactly.
So where does that, somewhere in the background, you're still doing this discovery, personal development element. So for everything that's happening to you, there's obviously this inquisitive mind that's going, I wonder what's happening here. So what's this journey now look like for you as you're continuing on? So where does this take you, and at what point do you, because, it feels like you end up, well, you tell me, like, where's the journey? And then, because you're now fully in doing men's work. So how do you get from that point to the men's work journey that you're on now?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I finally got the diploma, step 1 was complete. I got the diploma now. I'm a sales professional on paper. Now I actually have to go out and do it. So I went on this journey of finding different opportunities. And one of my friends happened to work at a massive cybersecurity company. Gave him the good word. I walked in there. I was an entrepreneur building a clothing business on the side as well. So I had some ideas on how I can really help this team grow and show up in this space. And I got the job. And I remember once again pulling up in the car to this massive building. And I was like, holy shit, it's university back over again. So as I was there, I started to just ask as many people as I could on how they've been growing through this place. And a couple people introduced me to meditation, introduced me to breath work, introduced me to a lot of these modalities that help me calm my mind and my body and begin to recalibrate my nervous system. And I was hooked. So on top of working out, which helped me move a lot of energy, meditation, which is essentially like a shower for the mind, that's just cleaning out all the dirt, and doing a lot of breath work, which I didn't know was recalibrating my nervous system and allowing some of these emotions to be released, was really changing me in the moment. And as I was there, it was a super toxic environment. I don't want to share the name of the company, but it was just crazy. If you could think about like Wolf of Wall Street, when somebody got a sale and there's a bell ringing and everybody goes crazy and there's a guy doing blow in the corner, like things were happening like that in this area. But it was a rush and I felt like I was somebody, right? I was doing all the things men were taught to do or thought that we have to be valuable for. I had a good job. I was making a lot of money and I was wearing a suit. So now as a man, I am the man, right? Instead of being a man, I am the man. And I felt like I'm doing it right.
Yeah.
So as I was there, I was like, you know what? I am the man. Let me just try to take this to the next level. And I went around into cybersecurity and I went to go connect with everybody that I could. And by that point, it's been years now. So obviously I read how to win friends and influence people. I had these ideas on how to connect. And I met everybody except one guy. And every time I saw this one guy, I would always project onto him. And once again, I didn't know about projections, but every time I saw him, I was like, you know what? This guy wears a turtleneck. I like to wear a turtleneck. He's always dressed sharp. I like to wear sharp clothes. Like I don't like this guy.
Mm.
And I remember there was a quote that I read by Abraham Lincoln, and I don't know it verbatim anymore, but it went something like this. I don't like this man. I must get to know him better. And one day I walk into the kitchen, making a coffee's dripping, doing my thing. And this man walks into the kitchen and he starts doing something in the fridge. And I look at him and I'm like, man, fuck it. I'm like, what's up, bro? And he goes, yeah, what's up, bro? And we just start conversating a little bit. And we connected on the topic of just being entrepreneurs, guys who want to take it to the next level. We always spoke about topics on how to better ourselves. At that point, partying was a distant thing for me. I didn't drink. I was sober. I was just super, super into personal development. And so was he. And he goes, listen, bro, I'm thinking about starting like a book club. I know you read a lot of books. Would you want to come? And I'm like, yeah, I'm about it. That's awesome. What's it called? And he's like, I'm not sure. So I inspired him for a name. And then he's like, come by next week. I'm like, cool. So I show up at this guy's house that I just met like a week ago at the cafe, get to his house, and there's a couple of chairs there, but there's nobody there in the living room. And he goes, hey, man, I invited a couple of people, but you're the only one that showed up. I'm like, okay. I don't know if like he's bullshitting me. Am I going to get kidnapped? Like, what the fuck's going on? Like, this is super uncomfortable. But he's like, take a seat, bro. I'm like, all right, cool. And he's like, man, I don't know how I feel about this. People didn't show up. Maybe we should just end it here now. And I was like, well, I drove here like 40 minutes, bro. I'm here already. Let's at least talk about a book and see where this goes. And we start talking about this book. And then we start talking about things below the surface. And then we got a little bit deeper. And we got a little bit deeper. And we got a little bit deeper. And funny enough, that person was Jose.
Uh-huh.
That person was Jose. And that was the first time in my life, outside of my friend in the basement, who I had a really deep conversation with, another man that I got really deep. And we talked about the things that weren't about cars or money or girls. It was about, hey, bro, how you feeling? How you doing? What do you need support in? And how can I hold you to that? And I'm sure, Mova, you've done breath work. And when you do breath work, sometimes and you have a strong experience, you feel this like charge in your body.
Yeah.
It's as if like it's tingling. That's how I felt walking out of that fucking room. And I was just like, wow, I want to do this again. So I told him, I was like, yo, let's do this again. And he's like, cool. And then once again, we invited a lot of people and one guy showed up. But that one guy felt it too. And I was just like, damn, man, why can't we get more guys to come and talk about this shit? Like, this is dope. Like, I'm feeling myself just support. I'm feeling charged. Like, what do we got to do? We got to get a stripper pole in here. Like, what do we got to do to get guys to come to this? Yeah. And we had this genius idea. I was like, well, I was big into fitness still. I was doing a lot of marketing for a couple of gyms and I had a space and I knew the owner of the gym and he was a professional MMA fighter. And I told Jose, I was like, listen, why don't we put this professional MMA fighter who's a badass, literally beats faces in the cage for a living and then goes home and meditates, to be at the forefront, and we'll have him be at the forefront, which is going to allow us to bring some men into space. And then while they're in there, we close the door and we get deep. So I shared that with all my friends. And I mean, who didn't want to meet a pro MMA fighter at the time? UFC was on the rise. Like everybody was like, I got to, meet this guy. They all come through, small circle. We close the door and we have our first official men's circle. And in that moment, I remember there was a guy, and I won't share his name, but he was about in his 40s. And he was a guy that actually worked with a lot of brands like Wu-Tang. I believe he worked with Biggie. He was a designer. And he walks out, and it's somebody I truly respect. And he puts his hand on my shoulder after we did the men's meeting. And he goes, Voy, that was the most powerful fucking conversation I've had in the last 30 years. Whatever you guys are doing here, don't stop.
Wow.
And I looked at Jose, he looked at me, and we both started tearing. And I'm like, holy shit, bro. Like, there's something here. Let's go back to the drawing board and come up with something next. And that's how MRM, Modern Renaissance Man, was birthed. And we decided to take our sales marketing backgrounds and we're like, how can we build something at the forefront that resonates with the modern man? However, when they step into this space, we then serve them a layer deeper. We serve them the men's work so they can truly feel what transformation feels like.
Mm.
So we started doing collaborations with like clothing brands, and we're saying like, hey, we're doing a dope ass event with a clothing brand. There's going to be a super dope discussion. Come by. So guys saw some cool shoes. The guys saw some cool clothes, hip, swaggy guys. They're like, we got to come through. They came through. We dropped it a layer deeper, and all those guys felt the medicine. And from that moment on, it was just a pull. Everything was just aligning for us, and we just had to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'll stop there.
Yeah. So that the energy that you talk about, I know that because that I have that when I finish every interview that I have with men because of exactly what you've just spoken about. And you know, people I talk to in normal day, I probably struggle with this concept that, you know, you're in the US, I'm here, but the energy connection, even though it's via video chat, is still there. Like, you know, what you've just spoken about just gives me, you know, the tingles, and I'm like, fuck, that's just so awesome. Like, I just love that. And as we spoke earlier, like the universe itself put you in those situations to put you in the room with Jose. No different to the universe put Jose in the situation, put him in the room with you so that you could meet, so MRM could be produced so that you could now produce this of service. At any point in time in your lives, if you said, nah, fuck it, I'm not going to go down that path, and you went against that universe, this would not have happened. And
surrender experiment.
The surrender experiment. This whole thing about fuck it today, I'm just going to say yes. You know, yes, I am going to take on this sales. I'm a shy guy who, you know, is going to be sweating the shit in shirts. I'm just going to say yes, and I'm just going to keep going because there's a force that I'm not aware of and I don't understand, but it's actually asking me to go down into this path. One of the interviews, and I love exactly what you guys are doing about, you know, getting people together and then dropping it down a layer. That, you know, it is such an awesome thing. One of the conversations I had with a guy in Australia, a guy by the name of Jay Godfrey, and asked how he got into the men's work. And there's a guy who, Watim Wainga, who runs the men's movement here in Australia. He said, he's this big Maori guy and was fucking 6'4" and, you know, 240 pound, right? He could be, you know, a front row without a problem at all. Right. And they're in the gym, and why goes this guy, how you going? How you feeling? He goes, oh, no. He goes, no. How are you feeling? What's coming up? And he's like, what the hell's this guy talking deep conversations in the middle of the gym? We're meant to be pumping iron here, right? But the fact that one man actually chose to just go, I'm going to slide below that layer. I'm not going to ask you about your car. I'm not going to ask you about the wife. I'm not going to ask you about the pizza you're going to have. I'm just going to go, no, bro. How are you actually feeling? That's such a powerful thing to do. And the fact that, you know, for me, it doesn't matter how the men come in the door. It's about, you know, are we going artificial, or are you actually willing to sit there and go, no, let's talk about this because we feel there's something on that. And the fact that you and Jose are doing that is just amazing. How do you, so you have these sessions, right? Like, talk me through, you've sort of alluded to it a bit already, but what is that sensation like? What does that look like for you after you have one of these sessions? I mean, you know, what's because remember the buzz used to be the MDMA, the buzz used to be the steroids, right? Talk into now, what's the buzz like, you know, and what does that look like for you in your world today?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up. And quite frankly, the buzz in terms of in that moment is the same, if not maybe stronger. But the beautiful thing about the men's work buzz is that when you feel this transformation and you feel this buzz, it's not like you go home and you bring it down the layer. You go home and you're still feeling it, and you're still feeling it, and you're still feeling it. And everything around you starts to shift, and other people recognize that too. So they validate even more of what you're experiencing and what you're feeling. So for example, with MDMA, if I did it on a Friday, I go through the night, Saturday comes by and it's like, fuck, I don't feel it anymore. I got to do it again and again and again. And you fall into this habit. So with men's work, when I feel this buzz, the transformation is happening in that. And then I get to pretty much overflow that into everyday life. And the way I like to see it is it's not necessarily so much that I'm getting something within. It's as if I'm stripping it down. Meaning, I'm sure you may have heard about the Michelangelo example where he was creating the statue of David.
Keep talking. Yeah, because others may not who've listened to this. So yeah, let's talk to it.
Okay, cool. So this is essentially how I like to view men's work in my eyes, in my perspective. And I believe that all of us have greatness in our DNA. We're born to be great. And as we come out the womb, people, parents, government, society, they start to impose these different ideas and they start to mold us into what they want, as opposed to what's really our truth, our power. So speaking to Michelangelo, when he was creating the statue of David, there was a marble, there was a rock. And there was like a reporter or interviewer. I don't know if they had interviewers back in the day, but he came by and he asked Michelangelo, he goes, there's this piece of rock. It's cracked too. Like, how are you going to create a masterpiece from this? And Michelangelo goes, it's easy. I'm just going to remove everything that's not David and out will come the masterpiece. So when I look at men's work, it's like, I'm just stepping into the space to remove all the bullshit that I picked up along the way to really expose my truth and power. So I could step into that, feel that freedom and ride that buzz till I hit the grave. It's not an overnight thing. It's not a weekend thing. That buzz is staying with me for as long as I continue to cultivate.
I love that, and I love that analogy too, because it's like I'm here to strip away everything that's not me, that's not the true me, who's not the true authentic me, and I'll continue to strip away. I'll strip away that projection of who I should be that was my mother, of who that I should be that was my father, of my brothers, or or society around me, and their discomfort is actually. Their discomfort with me stripping that away and who I'm becoming is actually a reflection back on the area where they're in a person saying, but I want you to strip that away for you too. So everywhere that they're feeling discomfort or people are pushing back into you, don't take it on. Just turn around and say, that's just an area of your life where you know that that's not adding value to you. And I'm making you feel uncomfortable because you're just not quite ready to take that step. It's okay if you choose not to. I'll still love you for it. But that's your discomfort to actually work your way through. And
right, exactly.
The other thing around the buzz is, as you can see the people who have the artificial stimulations, they go up and down. But there's a level of, at that point in time, they're sort of buzzing and they're going, but then they come back out of it. You can sort of almost see there's not the glow that sits in there. But for me, what I pick up on is, people will come up and go, what happened to you, or what took place? Like, and you probably get that as well. Like, boy, like people haven't seen you for years go, dude, like what happened to you? Tell me what you're on. Like, tell me what you're doing. Right. Because there's this natural energy, there's this natural glow. And it's actually, it's an inner glow. I know when I first had my awakening, like, all I could see was this red, orange, yellow energy ball that all of a sudden become uncovered. It's like, like Iron Man has that thing that sits on the front of his chest, right?
Yeah.
His energy source type of thing. It's like I found where it was. I found it inside of me, and for some reason, I just had to strip away until it's like, bang, there it is,
and let it shine.
And then let it shine. The next thing you're like, I'm just out there going, hey, look at this and look at this. I go, what the fuck happened to you? I'm like, I'm free. Like, I'm happy. I don't need all this other stuff. I can just be happy looking at a flower. I can be happy watching the waves roll in, and your perspective on life just completely changes once you strip all the other expectations and all the other externalizing elements that go along with it. So,
yeah, and it's beautifully said. And there's something I just want to share to that too, because it really does change even on a scientific level. So speaking back to the nervous system, the central nervous system, as we do the work and as we release, quote unquote, the trauma, the triggers, the bullshit, the central nervous then begins to expand. And when the central nervous begins to expand, we as individuals can actually hold more. And there's a saying, like, you could only go so far as you're willing to push your client, or as you could only push your client as far as you're willing to go, speaking in coaching terms. So the more work I do, the more my nervous system grows, and people feel that before you even say a word. So if you've ever been in a room, or if ever I've been in a room and somebody walks into the room that's done a lot of work, it's as if the energy shifts automatically, because my nervous picks it up my nervous system picks it up and says, shit, this guy's done a lot of work. I feel safe in his presence. I can feel his power. I can feel his truth. And I'm going to lean in a little bit more to that. So to that point, that glow, it's like the more we do, the more the central nervous system expands, the more people feel that. And that's by far the most powerful way to make change is we change ourselves first. Yeah. So I remember when I would try to change my family, for example, my father, right? As I got into men's work, I was like, I got to get my dad to come to a circle. I got to get my dad to do like a ceremony. I got to do all these different things. And he wasn't about it. He didn't believe it. He wasn't about it. But as I was doing more of the work and as I was expanding the nervous system and as I was feeling, as you were saying, as I was feeling that glow, my dad couldn't help to notice. And because he was feeling it, he then got curious. And as he got curious, then I positioned the invitation for him to learn more about it. And we started to get deeper and deeper and deeper. And for me, a big victory with my dad was for about 25 years of my life, we always had the handshake. Christmas parties, everybody gave hugs. Me and my dad got this super masculine handshake. And it was like, yeah, I was like, fuck. And all I wanted to do is just get a hug from my dad. That's it. So as I was doing the men's work and we're getting closer and closer, I started reaching in for the hug. And because that's something that I wanted and I felt the change in me and I felt the power to lean into that, I gave him a hug. And I remember the first time I gave my dad a hug, when you give somebody a hug and they're uncomfortable, so they have their arms on the side and they give you like the pat and he's just like, he didn't know what to do. He was freaking the fuck out. He's like, what's going on? Yeah. Right. But he felt it. And I kept leaning in again and again and again. And crazy enough, it took about 2 years. But after those 2 years, I remember traveling the world and coming back and seeing my dad at the airport. And he was standing there out with his arms like this. And that brought me to tears.
That's beautiful.
This was the first time I was just like, holy shit. Like my dad is showing me and he's welcoming me that love. And all that happened because I was doing the work.
Yeah.
So that little moment was just fucking pivotal for me and changed everything.
That's changed beautiful. Everything. And the energy felt was to feel safe with you.
Yeah.
And that's one of the key things. It's about you've enabled him to feel safe. And therefore he can open himself up to the emotion and the energy that hug brings. So that's absolutely awesome, man. I'm thrilled that that's happened for you. Absolutely thrilled that's happened for you. I know that a similar thing happened with me and my dad late in his life, and I can absolutely feel what that is like to be physically held and hugged by your dad. It's an immense moment. I think all boys cherish and look forward to. And when that moment comes, yes, you hold it for a very, very long period of time. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You've been super generous with your time, Voy. I've absolutely loved this conversation. What I like to do, just to close out, is, for the men who are listening there, or for the women who have got the men in their lives who are just maybe not sure where they're at or what to do. Is there something that you would like to sort of just leave out for them as a bit of a key takeaway message from the conversation today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. The thing that just comes to mind right now that's coming through, and I'm going to share this, is for the brothers listening out here, for the ladies listening. Allow yourself to bring this perspective into your life, which really changed mine. And it was when we feel something in the body.
Hey, folks. So Voy got cut off halfway through. This is the wonderful world of Zoom. And as you know, I don't do much editing except to have to piece this piece back together. So my Zoom crashed. I had asked Voy if he could pass on a message. He's been beautiful enough to still hang on while we did this. So, Voy, I'll come back to you, mate. Can you try to remember your beautiful message that we can hand out to the men and women? And my apologies.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you again. And I'm really glad to be here to share this message. And what's coming through for me right now in this moment to share with the men out there is there's a quote by Peter Crone. And it goes, life will bring you people and circumstances to show you where you're not free. So when we feel emotions in the body and things start to surface up, try not to run away from it. Try not to suppress it. Allow that to be the gateway to freedom, meaning the triggers are actually our teachers. And as we lean into the discomfort, we can actually find our truth, find our power, and ultimately find our freedom.
Beautiful. I love that. That's an absolute beautiful saying, and I think that's the key thing about it. Hopefully people, and more they've listened to this, understand it. Suppressing emotions actually shows up in many, many ways. It shows up in, one, how we turn up. It can show up in anger and frustration, but it can actually show up in a lot of physical ailments down the track because, how the body stores things. And, I'm loving the fact of learning and opening up into all that space. So yeah, thank you very much. Again, boy, thank you for your time. It's been a wonderful chat. It's been 12 months in the making. I'm so glad that we've actually had this chance to do a face-to-face connection.
Yeah.
I love all the work that you're actually doing with Man. I've just got to say, jump on at Voy Official is where you can find Voy on Instagram. He's a very trendy dude, dresses beautifully. Modern Renaissance Man is definitely a place to go. So you can find them on Instagram as well. His reels are just out there. I love all the stuff. I love watching and see how he goes. He's just one of the coolest, funkiest dudes that I've seen on Instagram, and now I've had the chance to meet face to face. So I've loved that. So thanks again, man. You have an absolutely beautiful day, and I'm really looking forward to maintaining this relationship that we've got as we go forward.
Absolutely, Millville. Thank you so much for the flowers, and just want to honor you for the work that you're doing and the stage that you created for men like myself and yourself as well to express this work and share it with the world, because the impact that you're creating right now is monumental. And I want to acknowledge you for that, brother. I want to honor you that. And I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for creating this space for us to speak our truth, to connect and share this with the world. So Millville, right back at you, brother. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And honestly, for this last hour or so, I feel like I've known you for a really long time. And I feel like because we dropped down a little bit deeper, we got that connection, and I could call you a brother. So thank you, man. Appreciate it.
My brother.
Sending you love.
Sending you much love too. Have a great day. Catch you later.
Good, man. Take care. We'll talk.
So folks, what a great conversation with Voy. And yes, you will see at the end, there's a bit of probably not so clever editing that I'll pull together for us to jump back on again. Just another beautiful journey. And I mean, what a challenge for Voy to, 8-year-old over in Poland, living out in the woods to be landed in New Jersey and to go on that discovery journey of his life. But I think, the key message for me is, what Voy constantly did was he listened to his intuition, whether he knew it or not. He was listening to his intuition. He was listening to his heart. He overrode the nervous system. He overrode the voices in his head, and he's now on such a beautiful journey. And the men that work with Voy, I know Voy's also done rites of passage. We didn't touch on that. I know he's actually now come out of that as well. And the space that he's providing for men is just fantastic, and it's leaving the world in such a beautiful place to move forward. And I get a lot just from what he does from a distance. So it's been an awesome chat. As you know, you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And again, I'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast and also leave a review. The more reviews that get left it helps move the podcast up the list. So when people are searching, it gets to the top. And every one of these men come on with courage, come on and are willing to open up, be open, transparent, and their stories should be heard by as many people around the world as we can. So if you could do that, that'd be greatly appreciated. So that's it, episode 48 of the Unearthed Man podcast. This is Milvo, sending you much love and care. Have a great day.